be today's last speaker. I'm not going to be as interesting as the previous two, but I'll give it my best shot. Because today I'm going to be talking about 3D generative models, which I think are the understated genre of generative AI out there compared to, for example, image generators, which I'm sure most, if not all of us, use. And 3D generative models have all kinds of applications from robotics to medtech to much more down to earth gaming environments, things like that. So I'm going to approach this subject by touching on three key points: their capabilities and practical applications. And in particular, I'm going to talk about a use case from my personal life. So this is grounded in reality. I'm going to talk about rigging, which is part of the animation process, because sometimes you create a 3D object or character and you want to animate it. And then I'm going to get only slightly techie and talk about some of the bottlenecks when it comes to training or building these models. So I want to start off with a story, but I want to mentally prepare some of you because the subject matter of this story is not everyone's cup of tea. This story involves Dungeons and Dragons, rat pirates, and 3D printing. So just bear with me here for a few minutes. So I have this friend, and he plays Dungeons and Dragons. And if you don't know, Dungeons and Dragons has several components to it. So it's got a manual, it's got some dice, and it's got these gray little figurines or miniatures. And these miniatures, I already see some nodding of heads, like aggressive nodding. Okay, some of you know what I'm talking about. Some of these miniatures, they're like a visual representation of your character or an encounter or a monster. And generally, you can get these miniatures online or from a gaming store. But this friend of mine, he tells me that sometimes he makes very elaborate storylines or campaigns, and the things he comes up with, miniatures for them don't exist. One example he gives me is a swashbuckling rat pirate holding a sword or a scimitar. Apparently, you can't find this miniature online. But he does have a 3D printer. And if he only had a file or a design, he could print this himself. And as I'm listening to his story, I realize that my friend has the same problem I do. Now, I don't play Dungeons and Dragons, but I also need 3D objects or 3D characters. He needs them for 3D printing, and I need them for augmented reality and virtual reality applications. And we need this to be quick, cheap, and custom. And historically, creating 3D objects has been anything but. So here's a brief timeline of how these things were made. Back in the 90s, we had manual polygon modeling where you take every polygon and make a character. That led way to digital sculpting. And then you have photo capture. But all of these things take time and resources, so they're not quick, they're not cheap. And unless you're running a gaming studio, they're not custom either. Your best bet is to buy something off the shelf or in a Unity store. And that's where this new category of 3D generative models comes in. And when I use these, I have a two-step process. The first step is I just make an image of what I want. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have used image generators. I'm just calling some out here by name. So Nano Banana, Flux, or Quen, right? Once I have an image of what I want, I take that image and I go to step 2 and I put it into a 3D generative model. These ones are less common, but I've named them as well. So Trippo is the one I like to use. There's Trellis 2, which was released by Microsoft a few months ago. And there's Hanyun 3D's line of models by Tencent. By the way, Tencent does a lot of work in the 3D space, both with 3D generators and world builders. So that's a simple two-step process. Let me show you what that actually looks like. I'm also using Comfy, but I'm not going to get technical with this. You guys are all pros now anyways. So going back to this rat pirate my friend was talking about, I took what he wanted and I prompted for it in Nano Banana. I'm just going to read this out for you if you can't see it. A 3D style character of a rat humanoid that is a swashbuckling pirate. He is holding a scimitar, direct front view, black background, full body, menacing pose, D&D style. I run this a few times until I get this image and I think, yeah, Very cool. This will work. So this is technically where step 1 could end. And I can take this image and go to step 2 and put it into a 3D generator. But for all practical purposes, I don't want to do that. The reason I don't want to do that is because I only have a picture of the front of this rat pirate. And 3D generators take a lot of resources and time to create something. So I don't want to leave it to this model's devices to come up with the back and the side view of what this might look like, because it's probably wrong and it's not something I want. Instead, what I do is I stay here and I take this image, I feed it back into Nano Banana, and I prompt for show the back of this character, keep everything consistent, and it gives me the back view of what this rat would look like. And I do this one more time for a side view, and now I have 3 different views of this character. And I'm saying this all nonchalant, but the fact that we have image generators that can do this now, they understand perspective and they maintain consistency, it's pretty magical. About a year ago, if you're using Flux or Stable Diffusion, you probably couldn't get this level of consistency in your generations. So I have these 3 images. Now I can go to step 2 with more control. And here I'm plugging the front, the back, and the side into my Trippo model. Trippo was the model I mentioned I like to use for 3D generation. I run it, and after a couple of minutes, I get this little rat guy. And let me show you what he looks like extracted. Here he is with 360 no scope. So you can see it's a real 3D object, right? And from here, I can just export this, send it to a 3D printer, and print this out. And that's exactly what my friend did. Here's a picture he sent me of this miniature fresh off the press. And clearly, many of you guys play Dungeons and Dragons. One of the rituals or one of the hobbies of this is once you get a miniature, you paint it. So he sent me a couple of shots of him painting it. He also sent me an action shot of the rat facing off against 2 other miniatures he'd bought online. So it looks pretty good. And this is where my friend's story sort of ends. But for my use case, AR, VR, gaming environments, I need to go one step further. I need to animate this thing. Because if I just drop this into a gaming environment, it's just a statue. And this is where rigging comes in. Rigging is part of the animation process, and it's where you put a skeleton into a 3D character. And you can see the skeleton right here, the little outline, front view, and side view. And this skeleton in the character acts very much like your skeleton. Your skeleton dictates where your body bends, and just as important, where it doesn't. Just with this, it shows where the pixels bend and where they don't. And once you have something rigged, you can add some animation. I added a couple of presets animations to this. Let me show you. So here's 2 different kinds of animations. The one closest to me is your standing idle animation. So let's say you're making a game, there's a door or treasure, you want something to stand guard. This is something you might use. The further one is your typical NPC walking animation. And what I want to do is pop out so you can see this is actually 3D, right? So I can move this around, and you can see the side and the back. So that's rigging. And by the way, rigging itself has historically been a very time-consuming process. But now there's generative models that auto-rig. And one I want to talk about is Unirig, which was released a year ago. It's an open source model, so if you were inclined, you could go online and download this and rig your own rat pirate. They also released a technical report, which I read through and I thought it was interesting. And in particular, I thought this graph here, I want to share with you because it kind of summarizes how these things work. And how they work is a 3-step process. You feed it your character, And the first thing it does is take a look at what it is that your character is and categorize it. So is it a humanoid? Is it a biped? A biped is a non-human character that walks on two legs. So something like Bowser from Mario or Charizard from Pokemon, or even my rat pirate would be a biped. Or is it a quadruped? And this is like a bear or a fox or a wolf, something like that. And once it has the category down, then it kind of injects a skeleton, which is step 2. Because you can imagine a bear or a fox or a wolf all kind of walk the same way. So a generic skeleton works for all of those categories. So now it has a skeleton and it can move. The final thing it does is it looks for things that move like fabric or hair or clothing, and it adds little joints. So in this example, it's a ponytail, here it's a skirt. So it adds little joints to that as well. So when you animate this thing, it doesn't look stiff. It moves as well. How good are these? Well, I tested one, and instead of the rat pirate, I made a exaggerated princess with flowing long hair and flowing dress, and I animated it. And you can see that the walking works well enough, but the hair is pretty janky. The inside dress bends with the legs, but the outside dress is very stiff, right? So this is early days for these type of models. I wouldn't take this and put it into a Pixar or Disney movie quite yet. But it is interesting how far they've come and what they do. So to wrap it up, what have we done? Well, we went from thought to substance. Here is the Discord message my friend sent me. Could you do a rat humanoid that is a swashbuckling pirate, maybe with a scimitar? I took his request. I made an image from it. I took the image. I put it into a 3D generator and made a 3D object. I took the 3D object and put it into a rigging model and made an animation. This whole process took me an afternoon and $50 worth of compute. Historically, this process has taken weeks and a small fortune at a studio, right? So all of this is impressive, and every step of this requires a different type or category of generative model. Now, that's it for rat pirates. I'm done talking about them. Although if there are any single ladies and you want to hear more about rat pirates, I'll be at the bar after. My last point I want to talk about is the 3D models and the bottlenecks in training them. Generally, when it comes to training any models, there are two primary inputs that dictate performance and quality. There's data quality and there's compute. When it comes to 3D models, they sort of suffer from both. In terms of data quality, first of all, there's a lack of 3D data out there, and this might be intuitive. So for example, when you go and browse the internet, you see a lot of images, but you rarely, if ever, run into 3D data or 3D objects. And the stuff that's out there is often poor, low quality data. I'll give you one example. The largest data set of 3D objects I'm aware of is Objiverse, which has 10 million labeled 3D objects. Trellis 2, which was trained and released by Microsoft a few months ago, was trained on 800,000 to 500,000 objects. And if you're doing the math, that's less than a 10% utilization rate, which kind of suggests how terrible all of these libraries and data sets are. So data quality is one issue. The other issue is compute. When you're training an image generator, like Nano Banana or Stable Diffusion or whatever, you're dealing with a two-dimensional pixel space. But when you're training a 3D model, you're going for a 2D pixel space to a 3D volumetric space. And because of that extra dimension, you need exponentially more compute. So what are we left with? Well, we're left with less data and more compute requirements. It's no wonder that these 3D models are a couple of generations behind their image generating counterparts. But there is still progress to be made. I know I said I was done with rat pirates, but just one more slide of rat pirates. For this presentation, I used Trippo, and Trippo has previous models released, so I went back and back tested these. And you can see when Trippo version 1.4 was released in 2024, this is what I got. It's pretty trash. in early 2025, triple version 2.5 was released. Better, but still meh. And then we see the improvement here. So despite these shortcomings, progress is being made in these models. Thank you. I'll take a couple of questions, and also if you want to hit me up on the gram, that's us right there. Yes?
So this is going to be very specific and a little nerdy, but this is a bit of my domain. In terms of, just because it's very interesting, what's the...
I'm glad you and everyone else agrees on that. Go on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. What's the topology on them like? Like, do you have
Terrible. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's
Okay.
that. Yeah, I knew someone was at, but there are new refiner. So
Sorry.
why don't you explain what it means?
It's okay. So when you're looking at a 3D model,
Do you want a mic?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
It's a mesh, right? Like, you know, when you look at it without all the stuff on it, it's like a 3D mesh, and the mesh connects. And if you have bad topology, you can have all these pieces that connect in a weird way. And if they connect in a weird way, it doesn't look good in production. It'll break eventually, right? So exactly, that's like low poly topology right there. So it's really important for 3D artists to re-topologize their models so that they work well.
Yeah.
So when you're making stuff with any, I guess like an LLM, you don't know what the topology is going to be like. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
You look at it later on.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a big deal if you're going into any kind of production. Right?
Yeah. So generally, in my limited experience, the topology is trash.
Yeah.
And you have to optimize it.
Right.
And the way you do that is you just either bring it into Blender, or there are now, and maybe Pers can correct me on this, but there are now topology models that all they do is they take this thing and they smooth it out a bit.
Yeah,
and
there's lots of tools, but it still takes like a really, like, if it's crap on the way in, it's going to be a lot of work to fix.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
For sure. Yeah.
And then second question, again, nerdy, the rigging part, does it allow for IK with inverse kinematics?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. Yes. You move.
Is it? Yes.
It does.
He's
Yeah.
my yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if I move my hand, right, my elbow and my shoulder moves along naturally with it, so you don't have to animate every single part.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So and you can set constraints on that. So that's amazing.
Right.
Thank you.
Any more questions on this?
Does rigging still apply to the architecture of the gaming? So can you basically generate an image, imagine a room, and then apply rigging to it, and then basically you have the space of a game, and then you apply your character inside of it?
Are you talking about rigging a world instead of a character?
And a space.
In my experience, the more broad you go from a single object, like instead of a tree, it's multiple trees in an oasis with a river, or it's an entire planet, it gets worse and worse and worse.
Maybe I put it in a bad way, but what I should have asked was that is rigging right now is only limited to objects, characters, and everything,
As opposed to,
spaces, architecture, buildings, cities.
I have not seen that. Yeah, but even like for characters, it's not great, right? It's very like low level, so I can't imagine. Yeah.
The vast majority of the data, most of the training data is rigging characters, right? Like the biped, humanoid, quadruped. So all of the training data is going to be that. It's going to be a couple of examples of the are rigging environments, which is very rare. So a model's not going to be very good at that because it's not going to have training data to base it off of, right?
Maybe are you like asking like you showing a door open? We need to ask him.
No. I want Sohail to answer.
Like for example, are you asking like putting a door into the model and then ask, can you use an arm bone to rig this door to
make it open?
So can you like do that?
Not that I've seen. I mean, not with AI. I'm sure you can just do it with like software, but not with AI. I haven't seen that. Yeah. Yes.
What was your VRAM requirement?
This is cloud, man. VRAM. But locally, I don't think there's much competition locally.
Aside being the highest resolution output for a 3D model, whether it's for production or print,
Yeah.
using
Trippo. So Trippo is now closed, but previous versions were open. So the closed source, I was just using API, so it wasn't a VRAM issue. Yeah. Any more? One more question? Yes.
Short question, because I really, and it's just kind of the dress, like when you render the woman, like when you rig the dress, and like doing something like in marvelous designer where it actually calculates the physics of the fabric and the weight of the fabric, and maybe there's like a wind or something. Do you think that, like for me, it's still very difficult to believe that AI will still sort of like get the nuances of like fabric or grooming, and then never mind what makes animation beautiful is there's also like a stylistic touch
Right.
to how like a fabric flows, how you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
right? Like because AI doesn't understand, like it knows what it's reading, but it doesn't have that like human touch of actually understanding
Sure.
for stylistic, oomph or
Yeah,
whatever.
there's like no weight to it.
Yeah. I mean, to push that even more, even with image generators, it doesn't get composition, right? So I don't think this sort of more, yeah, I don't think, I certainly don't think we're there. Will we get there? I don't know.
That's when we're going to look, I don't know,
Yeah.
like it'll be crazy.
But every 6 months something bizarre happens. So ask me again in 6 months. We'll see. Okay, guys. I think that's it for our speakers. Right now, it's just free for all, mingling, talk to your neighbors. When I came here, you guys all signed up for tickets. I think most of you did, anyways. We have some riffraff here, but I took a peep of the names that were on the list, and there's a lot of talented people here. So get together, meet your neighbor. You might be surprised who you run into, and don't be shy because no one else is. If you have any questions, talk to me or Sunny. But thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you guys had a good time. And we're always looking to see how we can improve or what you want to hear more about. Thank you. You think so?
You are so talented.
You
So
were
good at
saying all kinds of shit
multitasking.
to me. Yeah, you're just like, I'm fine now, you're not gonna